Southampton Football Club has a rich history with roots dating back to 1885. However, many associate the club with what they're doing in the present day in a manner known as the Southampton Way. Built upon respect, unity, accountability, creativity, and aspiration, the club operates differently than many of the giants in football, frequently developing players from within to help reach their potential rather than looking outwardly for finished products. This cycle repeats itself as some players, including the likes of Gareth Bale, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, and Luke Shaw, began their journey with Southampton but eventually moved on to a new stage in their careers. While it is unfortunate to see players leave, it is a crucial part of the club philosophy in order to help raise funds and develop more prospects. As we look towards the future, we will attempt to build upon the existing talent at Southampton and turn this consistent Premier League side to one that can compete in Europe again and eventually battle for the Premier League title. This is our FIFA 21 Southampton career mode. Let's begin. The wait is finally over. FIFA 21 is here, and it is time to begin our first career mode of this FIFA cycle with Southampton. If we haven't yet been introduced, or maybe it's been a while since you last visited the channel, my name's Flick. I like to make FIFA career mode content and have been doing so since FIFA 13. I like to do career modes a little differently here on the channel, mainly through two ways. We go at a pretty rapid pace, half a season per episode, 2 episodes a week, which ultimately boils down to a full season per week. I also like to make these career modes extremely interactive through a variety of methods, but primarily through press conferences. This is an opportunity for you to ask questions and for me to answer them. The topic of the questions can practically be anything related to the Southampton career mode. It could be a funny comment, something you noticed in the career mode, or maybe something you want me to dive into a little bit more detail. So if you do want to see your question featured in next episode's press conference, make sure to leave your press conference question in the comment section below. If you are excited about this Southampton career mode, make sure to leave a like on the video. It is a massive help to my channel. And also, if you haven't yet subscribed, be sure to do so you don't miss out on any future uploads. Like I mentioned, I plan on releasing this Southampton career mode pretty frequently, twice a week, alongside a couple other pieces of content, including career mode tutorials, as well as some challenges and experiments. But without further ado, let's review this Southampton squad that we'll be using for this series. And by default, we load up with a 4-4-2 formation. And in all honesty, I don't plan on making too many changes. I have modified the lineup a little bit. I've decided to put Shea Adams in instead of Shane Long, but I'll be keeping the same formation. I do like to try to use the tactic that the game loads us up with, but if that's not working, we can obviously adjust things along the way. Let's give a brief overview of our starting 11. We have McCarthy between the sticks. He had an extremely strong Premier League season for the 1920 campaign, and I'm hoping that can carry over into this career mode. The one thing that we do have to be mindful about McCarthy is that he is 30 years old. Goalkeepers don't tend to decline quite as much as outfield players, but it is something I am going to be keeping my eye on. And it's kind of the same thing for Bertrand. He's a left back, of course, and again, 30 years old. So we will have to think about a future long-term replacement for him. Although, to be fair, the rest of the Southampton defense is fairly young. Bednarak, 77 rated, just 24 years old. Stevens, 75 rated, 26 years old. And finally, a new addition to this Southampton squad on a permanent basis, Kyle Walker-Peters. He is the youngest of our defenders at just 23, and I'm hoping he can fulfill his potential. Moving up to our midfield, we'll be starting Armstrong at the right mid position, and I actually have some plans for him that will utilize one of the new features in FIFA 21, that being a development plan. And just looking at his stats, I think they're extremely well suited to kind of a box-to-box center midfielder. Considering we don't have too many center midfielders in this Southampton team, I think converting him from the right mid position to the center of the park will do us good. But speaking of our center midfielders, we'll transition to one of the key players of our squad and our captain, James Ward-Prowse. He is a product of the Southampton Youth Academy and still just 25 years old, so I consider him to be one of our essential players and someone that will be featuring in our starting 11 for the entirety of the career mode. Ireli's actually played a variety of positions, including right midfield and right back, so we might have to think about using a development plan for him as well. But paired alongside Ward-Prowse is Romeu. He's going to be our more holding center defensive midfielder, and unfortunately he will be suffering a decline in his rating unless we convert him from a center defensive mid to a center midfielder, so that's another thing we'll need to work on. And then on the left side, we have Nathan Redmond, another player that's been in fairly good form and one of the more creative players in this Southampton squad. Our strike force partnership will consist of Adams, who is the younger of our two strikers and someone who will hopefully grow in his rating. And then finally, we have Danny Ings, who scored the majority of Southampton's goals last season, and I wouldn't be surprised if that'll be the case in this career mode as well. We have a couple of good substitutes available to us. The ever reliable Fraser Forster, who has kind of hovered around this mid-70s rating for a couple of FIFAs now, but he'll be a good backup option for us. Vestergaard will be fighting for a starting 11 spot. To date, he's one of Southampton's most expensive transfers, so I'm sure he'll be wanting to feature in our first team. Smallbone is a up-and-coming player. Sims, a very pacey option that we can use on the right or left side. Gineppo, a very exciting prospect who is just 22 years old, and another player that has a lot of potential. The Premier League veteran Shane Long, it's good to have another experienced striker option alongside Obafemi, who is a bit younger, but has a lot of talent ahead of him. Although they're currently not part of our first team or substitute plans, we have a number of reserve players that have a lot of potential. That, of course, is one of the things that Southampton is known for, developing strong youth academy products and also making very sensible transfers for players that aren't too much more than their market value. Salisu is one of the new additions to this Southampton team. Still just 21 years old, a 76 rating, so if we can have him develop a little bit more in his statistics, I can definitely see him being part of our future first team plans. Valeri was a good right back option for Southampton in the past, and I think he will be competing with Walker Peters for that starting spot. McQueen, a player that's been around the Southampton squad for a while alongside Hesketh and pretty much all the players in this second row. But I do want to talk about a few players that I think will not be part of our first season plans, starting with Gunn. Of course, we have two quality goalkeeper options with McCarthy as well as Forster. I think two of these three will definitely want to be featuring in either the starting 11 or the substitutes. So in order to make sure he stays somewhat happy, I think I'll loan him out for the first season. And then if he can develop a bit more, maybe he can be a substitute player for us or even a first team starting goalkeeper. Otherwise, I think we will transfer list him. O'Connor has actually left the club on loan to Gillingham, so I'll try to replicate that in this crew mode by loan listing him and then transfer listing these three players who will also likely leave Southampton either in this transfer window or in future transfer windows IRL. Holt is heavily linked to Lazio at the current moment, and that deal might even be completed by the time this episode goes live. Buffel, unfortunately, has not been a part of Southampton and Hasenhüttl's plans, and Carrillo has been a very expensive but not very reliable transfer that Southampton made a few seasons ago. I think he's only featured in roughly 10 matches. Board objectives are going to play a big role in ensuring that our manager rating, which is located in the top left, stays at a pretty high number. And thankfully, FIFA 21 has done a good job of kind of replicating what Southampton are looking to achieve IRL. Our youth development is a high priority for us. We need to look to sign at least 3 players younger than 20 years old with potential greater than the average overall rating of players currently in the same position. I don't think we'll have a problem with that. For brand exposure, we need to get on a streak of 5 games with at least 1 goal scored in away matches this season, so that'll be heavily reliant on our strikers. Financially, we need to reduce player wages by $135,000 a week. Alongside that, we need to make a 10.8 million profit from youth player sales within 3 seasons. And then finally, domestically, we need to finish mid-table in the Premier League and reach the round of 16 for the FA Cup. At least for season 1, we don't have any continental objectives to consider. As for our budget, by default, we have roughly 30 million for our transfer budget, 270,000 for our wages. Although if we adjust that to an 80-20 split, that'll give us about 35.5 million in the transfer budget and still 170,000 for our wages. There have been a number of new features added to FIFA 21 career mode. In my opinion, one of the most important ones are development plans. It's something that I plan on utilizing a lot for my saves, and I think something y'all should definitely look into once you do get your hands on FIFA 21. We're actually going to try it out for James Ward-Prowse, and as you can see, we can change practically the type of player he is. By default, it is listed on balance, but you can change him to a playmaker, which will boost some of his shooting, passing, and dribbling stats. Box to box, which will boost the pace and shooting alongside some of the passing and dribbling. Ball winning midfielder, which will boost passing, dribbling, defending, physical. And finally, center midfielder, which will boost pace, passing, dribbling, and physical. I would consider this to basically be chem styles. If you guys play any ultimate team, you can pretty much boost some of the player statistics. So I'm actually going to be trying to convert Ward-Prowse into a box-to-box midfielder. I think he's lacking a bit in his pace, So this training will help out quite a bit for that. You can see how long it'll take for the development plan to complete. For Ward-Prowse, it'll only take 5 weeks for us to see him become a box-to-box midfielder. And then if we want to, later down the line, we can try to turn him into a different style player. I think for the purposes of our saves, I would definitely consider him potentially being a right midfielder, but that'll take longer than it would take for him to be a box-to-box player, roughly a year. It's definitely something I'm going to look into more as I play more of FIFA 21, but if you have any suggestions as to how I should be developing Ward-Prowse and what plans we should be using, make sure to let me know in the comment section. Like I foreshadowed earlier, I believe that developing Armstrong into a center midfielder will serve our squad more, because we are lacking some squad depth in that department. It's only going to take him 2 weeks for him to develop as well. One thing I almost forgot to do was look into Romeu's potential player training to make him a center midfielder. Unfortunately, I don't think that is realistic considering it is going to take 457 weeks. I don't even know how many years that is. But I think we're just going to be stuck with Romeu at a center defensive mid. If you have any suggestions or ideas what we can do about our formation to make sure he doesn't get that decline in his rating, please let me know. I'm learning just as quickly as you all are. And if you find something cool about FIFA 21, please feel free to share it. There have also been some changes to how the calendar looks. And as you can see, it is very heavily centric on player training. There are some different rules that you can schedule. And from what I've heard from the career mode community, the best format, which may change over time as we all continue to play the game a bit more, is rest day before matches, recovery day after matches, and then intermittent rest for the weekly plan. And basically how player training works is that you need to balance both fitness and sharpness. Fitness, I think a lot of you will be aware of, it's your player's stamina. So obviously low fitness means that they're going to be going into the match with less energy, less stamina, and you're usually going to have a bad time. But sharpness is very interesting, and it's not something I'm too familiar with yet, but from what I understand, high sharpness will increase the player's stats, kind of like how morale has done in previous career modes. So what I've optioned to do is include a lot of our substitute and reserve players for these drills. And then if I find that the sharpness for our starting 11 players is too low, maybe I'll incorporate them as well. One important thing to know about these player training drills is that you need to play them through at least once, achieve as high of a grade as possible, which will have the best impact on the sharpness. It wasn't too hard to get an A grade, and from what I understand, after this, you can just simulate them moving forward and you'll still get an A grade. For the most part, the emails that you receive at the start of the career mode are the same as previous years, but there has been one change. If you happen to pre-order the Champions or Ultimate Edition of the game, you will be greeted with a homegrown player. This is kind of like a Scout a Future Star from previous career modes. So as you can see, we have a player, Dexter Newton, already in our youth academy. That looks to be a great prospect. So as you can see, I have not made any changes to our youth academy going into the career mode, and already we have a number of players available. Here is Dexter Newton, and I don't know if I'm an outlier, but a 70 rated youth academy player is extremely rare to find. Looks to play really anywhere in the midfield. 70 overall, 17 years old, 75 to 94 potential. If we can work on his physical stats along with his defending, I think he can be a fantastic player. He's 6'4", has 5-star skill moves and a 4-star weak foot. And considering that squad depth in the center of the park is definitely an area that we need to improve upon, I think this is a great addition. Looking through some of the other players available in our youth academy, we have a 15-year-old center attacking mid from Norway, Mikkelbust. He doesn't quite have as much potential, but still a decent player, and we'll see how he progresses. Knežević is a Serbian left midfielder, 53 overall, has that 94 potential, so we'll see how he fares. Long is a 15-year-old center defensive mid from Germany, pretty much on the low end for the overall rating, but an alright potential. Ospelt, a center defensive mid from Liechtenstein. I think that's a new addition for the countries that you can scout this year, 67 to 93 potential. And finally, Salcedo, a 17-year-old right back from Colombia, one of the lowest overalls of the bunch. Along with all those players in our youth academy, we were also greeted with a 5-star experience, 4-star judgment scout. I think this is very realistic considering Southampton's objectives to develop their youth and incorporate the Southampton way. For this first scouting network, I think I'm going to keep things pretty basic. We'll scout in England for 6 months, pretty much up until the January transfer window and the start of episode 2. and we'll just search for any type of player so we can get a wide pool of talents. While I'm not going to cover every new feature that was added to FIFA 21 career mode, another cool one that was included is interactive match sim. I think this is kind of a game changer if you like to simulate a lot of matches in your career modes. You can still see how the matches play out, see how your players perform. And as you can see, one thing I do hope they incorporate later in the year is the speed at which these simulations go. Because watching 90 minutes of this, well, not 90 minutes in game, but essentially you're just sitting around waiting for highlights. I hope you can change the speed to maybe 2 times or 4 times, similar to other football games. The squad file available for this EA Play trial is not fully up to date, but I've done my best to replicate the transfers as much as possible, at least for the permanent deals. Loans, not so much. So Dest, this move just happened this morning at the time of me recording. He did go to Barcelona. The Diaz-Otamendi deal between Manchester City and Benfica. Paqueta to Lyon. And finally Suarez leaving Barcelona to Atletico Madrid on a free. But as far as the improvements that we can make to our squad, I have transfer listed a few players. I was very much interested in Sangare, but he made the move to PSV just days before me recording this episode. He was heavily linked with Southampton during the summer transfer window. The same thing with Cup Miners, who we may look to pick up from AZ. But I've also transfer listed Nandez. He is kind of a box-to-box center midfielder and someone that I think would be a good fit for our team. Ultimately, I'm going to sign the player that we can pick up for not too much more than his market value. I think if we can sign a player for less than 25 million, I will go ahead and make that signing. Otherwise, we'll have to look for other options. Ultimately, I think the agreement that we reached with Cagliari was extremely reasonable, so I have decided to bring in Nandez for just 17.5 million. It was a 3-year deal worth 40 grand a week. And he'll be playing as an important first team player. I think the addition of a midfielder that offers a bit more pace is something that will fare well for us if we decide to play him alongside Romeu or even Ward-Prowse in the midfield. Ward-Prowse will definitely still be a part of our first team plans. If I decide to go with a partnership of Romeu and Nandez, I'll probably switch Ward-Prowse over to that right midfield position and work on that development plan. Otherwise, I could definitely see a midfield partnership of Ward-Prowse and Nandez. As far as players leaving the club, we did have a few transfers go down. Gunn will be joining Augsburg on a short-term loan. Carrillo joining Boca Juniors on a permanent basis, as well as Buffal back to Liga and Monaco for 5.5 million. The final transfer was Hout to Valencia for 6.5 million. For the gameplay portion of each episode, we'll be switching over to some post commentary. I found this is the best way to analyze how our squad actually performs in game, and we'll be kicking off our Premier League campaign with a match against Leicester. And as far as our gameplay settings are concerned, we'll be playing on Legendary with competitor mode turned on, as it is a new feature in FIFA 21. I want to test it out and see if it is something that I want to use moving forward. But getting into the gameplay highlights, it'll be Leicester with the first opportunity just 7 minutes in. Madison buries this chance on the near post. Could this be the return of near post OP in FIFA 21? We will just have to wait and see. But it was a good finish by one of Leicester's most promising players. It didn't take long for us to generate some chances as Adams is played into space. Not too great of an angle as far as the shot is concerned, and saved pretty safely by Schmeichel. But here's Redmond from the left-hand side, playing it in to Ward-Prowse. Over to Adams. It is a bit of a cluster inside the box, but eventually Danny Ings will bury our first goal of the Southampton career mode. And of course, what other player would it be? I always aspire to generate some entertaining gameplay for you all, but sometimes you just have to take the goals that are given to you. I quickly discovered that the left-hand side of our attack was working for us, as a chance for James Ward-Prowse right around the edge of the 18 is saved well by Schmeichel. But again, Ward-Prowse contributing to the attack, playing this one through to Armstrong, looking for the square pass across to Adams, trying to net that goal, which he was unable to score earlier in the match. But now moving forward to the 70th minute, it'll be a few chances for Leicester. This one's saved by McCarthy, but on the corner kick, Slimani eventually finds Tielemans, and I think this is a good example of competitor mode. Dragbacks are very common, and that is a fantastic finish from Under. Kind of similar to the chance that Ward-Prowse had earlier in the match, this opportunity was well taken. Being 2-1 down at this point and aspiring to at least get a draw from this match, I started to pour forward players. Gineppo getting involved as a substitute, and what a goal that is from Danny Ings. From my early impressions in FIFA 21, I have to say that headers are back, and what a header that is. Not the best keeper animation from Schmeichel, but you can't discredit the quality of that goal from Ings. But as we push on into the 3 minutes of added extra time, I think both sides were really striving for all 3 points. As we send in this cross, saved well by Schmeichel, and he will try to get a counterattack going for Leicester. They go with the over-the-top ball, trying to get it forward to their attackers, but it falls to us. Ward-Prowse the Sims. We know we don't have much time left, and Ings, getting inside the box, will go with the near-post effort, and somehow that found the back of the net. Schmeichel not having the best second half, conceding 2 goals within just about 10 minutes, and will be walking away with all 3 points. It is early in the season, but I think we already have a good understanding of the quality that's within this Southampton side and what we need to work on. Just a few weeks later, we had this match against Spurs, which was actually a really interesting fixture IRL. Southampton had a good first half, but eventually it was the link-up play between Kane and Son that led to a Spurs victory. I think this match will have some extra importance for us because one of our former players, Højbjerg, will feature in Spurs starting 11. Højbjerg is going to get involved in the first attacking chance for Spurs. Some good build-up play from them, but a good original save, but potentially an even better double save from McCarthy, denying that chance from Heung-min Son. I think that sequence of saves from McCarthy gave our entire squad some confidence as Redmond will burst forward and look for an attacking presence here within the box as both of his striker options, eventually options for Adams, who will be denied by Hugo Lloris. But really nice pass here from Redmond. I mentioned earlier in the episode that I enjoy the creativity that he offers into the squad, and we know how clinical Ings can be inside the box. He netted a hat trick in his first match, and he'll go again and score another goal. Once you score a few goals on the computer and take the lead, I found that competitor mode becomes a lot easier. The AI pushes way too many players forward, and you can score more and more goals like this one. Very similar to the first goal we scored, just playing it across super simply, and Ings is never going to miss from there. Now it's Adams getting into a good goal scoring opportunity, but he options to play it across. Maybe that's the lack of confidence coming into play. I think if that was Ings in the same sort of position, he definitely would have gone for goal, but we luck out here as Walker-Peters gets a good deflection, and he's going to take some heavy touches forward, looking for that run across, and this is going to give Adams some confidence. It was a beautiful cross from Walker-Peters, and all Adams had to do was finish. But that has to be one of the best goals that we've scored all season. Just a perfectly weighted pass. Big 3-0 up at this point. The match was done and dusted, but that won't stop us from trying to push on and score a 4th as Ings goes with another near post effort, but this one is denied by Hugo Lloris. I kind of felt bad for him considering his defense didn't help him out through the match, but we pick up another big 3 points against a strong Spurs side. After playing a couple of Premier League matches, I think it's time to turn our focus to the Carabao Cup, which we've kind of made a run in. Defeating Chelsea in the 3rd round 1-0, and then defeating Bournemouth 2-1 in the 4th round. That matched us up against Manchester City in the quarterfinal. I would argue we had the toughest draw possible. You look at some of the other Premier League sides like Manchester United, Arsenal, and Liverpool, they're playing against squads that are in the lower divisions of English football. But considering that match fixture congestion is still a thing, and I want to give an opportunity for some of our younger and lower overall players to break into these substitutes and starting 11. I have rotated our squad around a little bit. I still have some of our staple players like Ings and Ward-Prowse in the starting 11, but definitely a lot of rotational players here. If you want to beat top teams like Manchester City, you need to make the most out of the few chances you are given. What an opportunity for us here, but Fernandinho denies the goal-scoring chance from Obafemi with the clearance off the line, and only one thing was going to happen after that, some precise play inside the box from City. Aguero from just a few yards away will bury the chance and put them up in front. It's Aguero again in the 24th minute. He was wreaking havoc on our defense, and he was extremely clinical inside the area, making it 2-0 24 minutes in. And at this point, I knew we had to change our tactics. Whatever we were doing defensively was not working. Maybe it had to do with our rotated side, but I just felt like our defenders were not quick enough to keep up with Manchester City's attackers. Another chance missed from us there by Ings, who has been in extremely good form, but that would have changed the momentum of this match. But instead, we go down 3-0 before the halftime break, and things were definitely not looking great for us here. We are given a sign of hope as our new signing Nandez plays a great through ball through to Obafemi, who had that opportunity earlier in the match. This one he will make the most of, narrowing the lead to 3-1. And if we can continue this form, maybe we can see another comeback like we had against Leicester City. But regardless, it's good to give the fans something to cheer about. I felt like Manchester City started pushing forward the defenders and played an extremely high line as Obafemi sees the space for Danny Ings, and he just was not on form when I needed him to be. That's 2 goal scoring chances that could have made things level had they both gone in. And then later on, Vestergaard misses an open header. If there's one thing that he excels at, it's his aerial presence, but unfortunately he puts that chance wide. I think those missed chances started to impact the way I was playing, just way too aggressive and leaving open chances for Manchester City to score some more goals. Saul, a new signing for them, will make things 4, and it will be a heavy defeat for us now in the Carabao Cup. But I don't think it's the worst thing. Now we can focus more on other competitions like the Premier League and the FA Cup later in the season. We do have one more match to feature, but before we can get into that, I have to address a few things regarding our youth academy. A few players are unsettled, so we will be promoting them to our first team. Dexter Newton being the first player, and at this point, I think he is ready for the call-up. Has potential to be special, will likely feature in our substitutes or maybe the reserves at 71 overall. But looking at some of these individual attributes, you can see what he excels in and what he needs to work on. I think it's the pace and a lot of those physical attributes that I'm probably going to focus his development plan, because for the technicals, he's extremely gifted. Although he doesn't have quite as much hype as Newton, I do want to call up Woods as well. He is a defender, can play both right back and center back, has potential to be special, and I found that a lot of these players that already have good physical attributes like Woods end up becoming really talented prospects in the future. But to close out our gameplay for episode 1, we'll take part in a rivalry match between 2 teams on England's south coast as we travel to Brighton. Although it is still early in the Premier League season, I feel like Brighton have been an exciting team to watch and have produced some good results IRL. It seems like their form has translated over to FIFA as they net the first goal here via a near post effort from Gross, and they'll continue their good attacking form as Daka could have squared that across, but instead he's going to hover towards the corner flag, eventually finding Mupé, who showcases some great technical ability. That flick completely fooled our defender, and it was just a tap-in goal for the other attacker that was in a good goal scoring position. We saw some moments of good form from Obafemi, and I think that's good to have for a young striker because I don't have too high expectations. He still has a lot of room to grow, but it would be nice if he finished more chances like that one. Regardless, it was still good to see that we could get into goal scoring opportunities as Armstrong here from the right hand side will play this across. We've scored so many goals like this already in this first episode, but it is just what has been effective for me in FIFA 21. I still need to figure out which gameplay mechanics end up being most effective in career mode. This is a good save from McCarthy, denying Gross again from getting a brace, but eventually it is Gross who sets up Daka for the 3rd goal from Brighton and puts them 2 in front. Being down by multiple goals, I had to turn over to my aggressive defensive style, and I think that ends up costing me, in all honesty, more than it is a benefit. As Brighton make it 4, Connolly nets another near post effort, and again, it's something that we need to improve upon moving forward. I think finding a balance between a high pressure play style that will generate a lot of attacking chances and one that doesn't concede too many goals is the thing that I'm looking to do the most this FIFA. If you have any specific tactics in mind, let me know in the comments, but for now, I haven't really switched around any of Southampton's default tactics, as a few opportunities are denied here via the crossbar and the post for both teams, and we will close out this episode with another loss. But all things considered, I'm not too unhappy with our form. We won 2 big matches early in the season, although our form has dipped. And for how we're doing in the Premier League, we're pretty much on track for our mid-table finish, currently in 11th place with 27 points, well above 12th place West Ham and kind of the teams below them. But if we look higher up in the table, it is very close for all these mid-table Premier League teams. I'm not sure if we'll be able to qualify for a Europa League spot, still 10 points behind Wolves for that 6th place position, but anything can happen in the second half of the Premier League season. although it does appear that either Liverpool, Manchester United, or Manchester City will be winning the title. Ings is by and far the leading goal scorer for us with 14 goals from 30 matches. Really good form from him. Ward-Prowse contributing a good amount as well from the center midfield position, 6 goals from 27. Shea Adams also adding to the goal scoring tally with 5 from 27. For the assist category, we've got Ward-Prowse and Redmond both with 4. Armstrong and Ings both with 3. We have already had 2 Youth Academy promotions in the first half of the season, but it appears that more promotions may be on the way, as we have an 88 to 94 potential right winger / right midfielder from England, 5-star skills as well, and then Chapman 76 to 94 potential. Our English scout really did well bringing back a wide variety of players, so let me know in the comment section if you want to see me promote any of these players in the next episode. Speaking of the next episode, here is how our current first team starting 11 will line up, and I am looking to make some improvements in the January transfer window to solidify that mid-table finish. Maybe we can push a few spots higher for our Premier League standing. In my opinion, there are 2 positions that we could immediately improve upon, that being a secondary striker alongside Ings. Adams has done all right, but I think we could do with a higher overall striker there. We could also look to sign a right midfielder. Armstrong has gone up by a few ratings, but I am definitely interested in eventually converting him to a center midfielder. So obviously we would need to find a replacement there. But I hope you all have enjoyed this first episode of our Southampton career mode. I am excited to push on with more FIFA 21 content and really make this career mode great. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure you leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. But until next time, this has been Flick. I'll be talking to you all again soon.